in an absolute gold rush when it comes to AI. I mean, new companies are popping up practically overnight, and every single one is promising to change the world. But behind all that hype, there's a hidden trap, one that can make these amazing ideas obsolete just as quickly as they appeared. So this is your survival guide. And to give you a sense of the scale here, just get this. A recent analysis found that a staggering 89% of new companies in the famous Y Combinator accelerator are AI-powered. This isn't just some trend, it's a massive, fundamental shift. You know, AI-powered has basically become the new .com. Okay, but that begs a pretty huge question, right? With literally almost everyone rushing into the exact same space, when the dust finally settles, how many of these startups are actually going to be left standing? Because the very platforms that are making this boom possible, well, they're also the biggest threat to their survival. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack this AI gold rush and what's being called the great AI squeeze that it's creating. Then we'll get into the good stuff, the survival strategies. We'll focus on the power of something called vertical AI. And finally, how to build a truly defensible advantage with what's known as a learning loop. So let's start with the AI gold rush itself. This first wave of the revolution, it's really defined by one key idea that you have to understand to get the trap. It's called the wrapper dilemma. So what is a wrapper startup? Well, think of it this way. They don't build the core AI engine themselves. Instead, they just call an API from a giant like OpenAI, and then they put a nice, clean user interface or a simple workflow right on top of it. It's fast, it's pretty easy to build, but it is also incredibly fragile. And you know, this quote right here just absolutely nails the danger. The big companies providing the core AI, like OpenAI, they have a bird's eye view of everything people are building. They can see what's popular, which features are taking off, and then they can just build those features directly into their own product, often giving it away for free. And things are moving at like lightning speed. Back in 2022, we were in the wrapper era. By 2024, we'd moved to the AI native era with deeper integrations. But now we're entering what's being called the agentic era. And this is where the game totally changes. It's not enough to just use AI anymore. You've got to build a system that actually learns. So is everything out there just a wrapper? Well, the data says not really. Only about 15% of recent YC startups are what you'd call thin wrappers. The biggest chunk is applied AI, which has a bit more technical meat on the bones. But that 15%, I mean, that's still over 100 companies built on some pretty shaky ground. And that brings us right to what's being called the great AI squeeze. This is where that theoretical risk becomes a very painful, very real problem. So let's look at what happens when the platforms decide to attack. If you've been in tech for a while, you've probably heard the term Sherlocking. It's what happens when Apple sees a popular third-party app and just builds that feature directly into iOS, basically killing the original company. Well, what's happening in AI is that same idea, but on absolute steroids. We're talking weeks, not years. An entire category of ChatGPT for PDFs apps got wiped out by a single OpenAI update. Okay, let's take a real-world example, Jasper. They were the unicorn of the early generative AI wave, valued at $1.5 billion for their AI copywriting tool. I mean, they were flying high. Then, in November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT for free, giving away the exact capability that Jasper was selling. And just like that, overnight, their core feature became a commodity, forcing a really tough pivot and layoffs. Or how about the cautionary tale of Kite? These guys were pioneers, spending more than 7 years building an incredible AI coding assistant. But they just got outmaneuvered by GitHub Copilot. The thing is, Copilot, backed by Microsoft, had deeper pockets, way more data, and, crucially, it was built right into the tools developers were already using every single day. Kite just couldn't compete and had to shut its doors. All right, that was a little bleak, wasn't it? That was the bad news. But it's not all doom and gloom. Now we get to talk about how you actually survive the platform giants. Because there is a playbook for building a defensible business and finding your moat in this new world. So the billion-dollar question is, how do you build something that the giants can't or just won't copy and then give away for free? And the answer isn't about building a slightly better wrapper. It's about playing a totally different game. And this is where we get to the first big strategy. You've got to go vertical. See, the platform giants like OpenAI and Google, they're building horizontal AI. It's general purpose, it's designed to do a little bit of everything for everyone. The opportunity for startups is to build vertical AI. That means highly specialized solutions for very specific industries.
Okay, so let's really dig into this idea of vertical AI. Instead of trying to be a mile wide and an inch deep like the big platforms, the winning move for a startup is to be an inch wide and a mile deep.
We've actually seen this exact playbook before. In the last big wave of software, vertical SaaS companies became absolute giants. Viva didn't try to build a CRM for everyone. They built it specifically for the complex rules of the life sciences industry. Procore built software just for construction. They won because they embraced the messy, complicated details of one specific industry. And that exact same playbook is open for AI right now. And just how big is this opportunity? Well, look at this number. That's not the software market. That's $3.8 trillion. That is the collective annual wages of knowledge workers in the US. Vertical AI can tap into this by automating and augmenting very specific high-value tasks, basically turning a slice of that massive payroll spend into AI-driven productivity. Okay, so how do you actually win in a vertical? Well, it's not just one thing, it's a whole recipe. It's about taking a general model and adapting it with unique industry data. It means integrating deeply into the messy, real-world workflows people are already using. It's about navigating complex regulations the platforms would never touch. And maybe most important of all, it's about getting access to proprietary data the giants just can't get their hands on. But, okay, there's another layer to this, an even more powerful strategy that builds right on top of going vertical. And that brings us to our final section, building the learning loop. This is the ultimate defense. This is what we call the agentic advantage. It's the ultimate moat. And you have to understand, this is a huge mental shift. See, we used to think the winner in AI would be whoever had the biggest pile of old data. That's not really true anymore. Today, the most valuable asset isn't some static database. It's a live feedback loop from your expert users interacting with your product in their actual day-to-day work. It's a living asset that gets more valuable every time someone uses it. So that gives us a really concrete 5-step playbook. 1. Go after the messy, complex workflows that are just full of exceptions. 2. Build your own proprietary feedback loops to capture how human experts deal with all those exceptions. 3. Own the boring, duct tape parts of a business process that the giants won't touch. 4. Hire people who are experts in the industry, not just in AI. And finally, 5. Be completely obsessed with speed and the tiny details of your niche. All right, so let's wrap this idea up. A truly defensible AI product. It's not just using AI. It's building an entire system around the AI, a system that watches users, learns from what they do, and continuously improves itself. That is a moat that actually gets wider and deeper over time. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. As you look at this whole AI landscape, you have to ask, is a company's real competitive advantage, their moat, defined by what their product does today, or is it defined by its ability to get better, by what their product learns for tomorrow? In the age of AI, the answer to that question changes absolutely everything.